Okay, I wanted to give an update on the GUI2 work that's been going on with ONOS. So this is basically migrating the ONOS GUI onto a more modern version of the Angular framework. So previously I gave an update and there are slides and videos available from this in Google. I guess what has been achieved since we've moved to Angular 7, we've moved the build and test and linting to the Bazel framework, the new build framework for ONOS, replacing Buck. We have moved the GUI framework out into its own Angular library or NPM library. The alarm view GUI has been implemented, and that's also been separated out as an external application. And then we started the topology view migration. That's a big work there. The topology view is is one of the biggest parts of the ONOS GUI. So let me just change over to my editor here. I just wanted to show the structure. So this is the old GUI under the GUI folder. GUI2 is the new application, and here is the framework separated out as its own library. So now it's built separately and it's a dependency in this GUI2. So let me just go into this GUI and I'll look at the Bazel build file, replacing the Buck file. And you can see here we're using gen rules and basically using it to call on Angular build and Angular lint and Angular test and all of this kind of stuff. So basically it's just wrapping Angular CLI. The more complex approach of using Bazel targets for Angular directly hasn't been used here, because really those plugins and tools aren't really at a maturity level that you could use them in production. But this is something we'll look at in the next release. So just to look quickly at the framework library. So basically it's the code now has been moved here to this location. So all of the familiar things like the layer, the navigation menu, those components, services, directives and classes, base classes have all been moved here, and basically they're all bundled up together, and there's a public API file to export those. And when they're built, they can be reused in any project. Here, for instance, they're imported into this GUI project with this line here. So in package.json, you say I want to use the GUI2 framework library. You give it a location where the file is, but this could have been uploaded to NPM as well. It allows great flexibility in reusing components of it. Okay, you can also see here we've upgraded to Angular version 7. Here as well, you can see that the FM GUI, the alarm management view, has been imported here as well, and that's also done through the similar kind of mechanism that's defined in fault management here under FM GUI2 lib, and again it's the same kind of a structure, whereas under projects, and that has two components, one for the alarm details view and one for the alarm table view. So let me just I was just going to quickly show the topology view work that has started. So here in the GUI, it's we've kept the hierarchy of the old GUI application, but this may get rearranged at a later date. But for the moment, it's buried down in source, main, web app, app, and here under view, we have the topology view. Okay, so let me just discuss that. Let me bring it up here. It's running in the background. So the topology view is really just at a very, very early stage here. So not all of the panels are ready. Let me just refresh this just to bring it back to its reset view. What we have here is we have the instances panel, summary panel, and here we have some nodes which have been laid out using a force graph. So the nodes are draggable, just as before, and here the hosts, because we're just hasn't been implemented yet, the hosts are just being displayed by a circle. But this is getting it from the back end, and when I select on a switch here, it basically brings up the details panel. So I've got keyboard shortcuts implemented, like say L is what I'm going to press here, and it brings up a toggle of the labels for the switches, and also I can toggle the instances panel. I can toggle the summary panel and the display panel. What I've done here is I have a layered approach for the topology view. So devices are not connected as one layer, the force graph is another layer, the background map is another layer, and this is basically just an SVG map of Croatia. Just to demonstrate the concept. So in addition to the dragging of nodes, I've implemented the zoom as well. So using the scroll wheel, I can zoom in and out, and also pan by dragging across on the viewport as well. So just to discuss a little bit about it, the topology here has been laid out in this hierarchical fashion. So we've got the panels, each one has their own component, and so on, and then the layers, each one has their own component, and then some of them, like say that force component has its own child components beneath it. So basically there's one for displaying a device icon, one for a host icon, one for a sub-region, and the link gets its own component as well. So very modular, very controllable, and of course each one of these components is addressable and reusable, and kind of runs in its own sandbox. Its CSS is not, and its HTML template is not shared among other components and can be loaded and unloaded dynamically. So this is a big change to the topology view in how it's implemented. By comparison, I was just going to bring up the old Topo 2 view, which let me see, app and view and Topo 2 is a very flat model. There's one HTML and two CSS files for all of the services, and everything here is a service. So the new approach is to structure the thing in a far more kind of logical way. Now, as you probably know, in the old GUI there was a topology 1 and a topology 2, and I think all of the features of topology never got migrated to topology 2, but that's what we're aiming for here with this GUI, is to migrate everything across and have the best of both parts merged into one. And the topology 2 brings new features like regions and sub-regions and navigation, a hierarchy effectively of views to deal with large networks. So that's something that topology is going to implement as well. There was one other thing I just wanted to cover is in developing these, I used Angular CLI, but what I'm also using here is IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate Edition, which has support for TypeScript. The Community Edition doesn't have support for TypeScript, and basically what you end up with is all grayed out text, and there's no context sensitivity at all in the Community Edition. So for anyone developing in TypeScript, I would say the Ultimate Edition is well worth the license cost for it. It's a pretty modest license cost. Okay, just to go back to this view, what I wanted to do as well is just quickly show the alarms view. The alarms appears here because I have the fault management application loaded, and really it's just a tabular layout with a details pop in that comes in at the side there, and context sensitivity will be added to this as well, that will allow you to go to the device view from it. Just to quickly go back to the slides, what I wanted to just follow up with is there's a couple of screenshots that we've seen already. Is the next tasks. Okay, so the topology view, we're looking at fully implementing regions and sub-regions and the breadcrumbs, implementing the toolbar and all of the functions it has, looking at background maps and getting all of those loaded in the menus as previously, respecting the latitude and longitude and fixed positions of nodes, dealing with layers like packet and optical and that kind of stuff. And then there's a bit of Java backend work as well in terms of getting the Topo 2 Java backend up to the same level as topology. Unfortunately, it's not there, so that will take some work too. So still a lot of work to do in the topology view to bring things up to par. But that's really where it is at the moment. So as with all of these things, any help would be greatly appreciated by anybody that's interested in getting involved in the GUI2 project. Thank you very much indeed.